Welcome to the AEN Stories channel.
I used to believe I could measure a life by small competencies, knowing where the jack point is under a car, how to reset a tripped breaker, what to say to a teenage girl whose mouth slams shut like a storm door. I built myself out of the half-heroics American dads perform without applause. I carried jumper cables like some men carry Bibles. I could make a grilled cheese in a cast iron pan and not burn it. I knew when to shut up. The night my life cracked, the call came in at 7:38 p.m. Exactly. I looked at the oven clock as it rang because I was timing a casserole, that beige kind Megan swears she hates and then eats in sullen spoonfuls. Laura had a book club, wine, laughing, women saying it's been a week like a password, and my parents were coming over later for coffee, a ritual they clung to as if caffeine could fix time. Megan was in her room, feet on the wall, texting with ferocity. "Dad," she said when I answered, drawing the word out like it had to stretch. "My tire is flat." We'd just put new tires on her car, used but decent, because 16 in our county means four wheels and curfews and the terror of letting your kid speed away into the evening. "Where are you?" "Cedar and 3rd, she said. "By the dog park." "Cedar and 3rd? I repeated, already turning the oven off. I wrote things down even when I didn't need to, it's a habit from the office. "Okay. Sit tight. Don't try to drive it." "What would I do?" she said, not a question. "Hazards on," I said. "Lock the doors." Her sigh rustled through the line. "Okay, Dad." Laura walked through the kitchen in the black sweater, the one that makes her look like she's about to sell you high-end skincare. She had a lipstick in her hand and a look in her eye that meant she'd not yet decided what face to wear. "Megan?" she asked. "Flat tire," I said. "Dog park." "I'll go," Laura said, quick, and I shook my head because I am a man who solves the same three kinds of problems. "It's fine," I said. "You have book club. Tell Sarah I still have her pie dish." Laura smiled without showing her teeth. "I will. Megan should really learn to change a tire." "She will," I said. "With me. Tonight's lesson." She kissed my cheek like a formality. "You're a good dad," she said, and it hit me sideways like praise from a teacher when you've only done what was asked. I drove out with the dome light still on for the first block and then turned it off because I hate wasting battery. It had been hot during the day but the evening was stepping in, breeze off the fields. The dog park is just a fenced parcel with optimism. People here put bumper stickers about rescues and then leave their dogs outside all day. At Cedar and 3rd there was no sign of Megan's Civic. I pulled to the shoulder and killed the lights and waited for some movie script of recognition to kick in. It didn't. I called her. "I'm here," I said. "Where are you?" A pause. I could hear something teeny on her end, music, voices, a TV. "I'm at Cedar and 3rd. "No, you're not." She made a teenage noise, a sound that conveys how daring it is to be corrected. "The other Cedar and 3rd, she said. "By the Walgreens. I always forget they have the same names on both sides of the split." "They changed the grid 10 years ago," I said, pointlessly. "I'm coming." And here's the part that will always be both nothing and everything. Instead of going back the way I came, Main to Park to Pine, I cut through a neighborhood I never drive. There is no why. I took a left because the light was green and an old Chevy was pushing the speed limit in my lane. I cut through Maple, the one with the big Victorians no one can afford to heat. I cut over onto Rowan, past the all-night laundromat where the neon only half works, and then down Juniper, which is basically an alley with better PR. Then I ran into the motel. We all know the motel. It wears itself like a costume. The sign says Pine Grove Motor Lodge but we call it the Hourly. It sits behind the diner that tries to make pancakes a personality. The rooms have those curtains the color of dishwater and the AC units that growl like tired dogs. It is one of those places you notice by unnoticing. As I eased down Juniper I saw a car that made my stomach do something I did not recognize as a bodily function. A silver Outback, 2 model years newer than ours. Our car was blue. Laura insisted on blue because she said she's tired of driving appliances, and the paint hugged the curves like a salesman's promise. The one in front of me was silver. I saw the chalky residue of a dealership sticker scraped off badly, a missing front license plate, and a small dent near the rear quarter panel where our garbage can had leapt out one morning weeks ago and Laura had cursed like an apology. The dent had a shape. I knew that shape. I slowed without meaning to. The Outback was tucked against the back row, under a palm helplessly planted 30 years too late. A light was on behind the curtain in a first-floor room. The TV's flicker made the fabric pulse. It's a strange thing, how your mind fights to make something less true. I ran through all the plausible implausibilities. Someone else. Coincidence. The world full enough to be cruel but not personally so. Then I did the thing men do when they suspect and do not want to suspect. I called. Laura answered on the second ring. You could hear laughter in the background, women, high and jagged, the sound of a party that isn't yet drunk enough to become a choir. Hey, she said. You on your way back? Still looking, I said. Where are you? At Sarah's, she said, like saying the weather. We're doing stupid games. I think someone's about to force me to do a shot. Tell Sarah I still have her pie dish, I said, because my brain is a machine with slots for certain lines. You told me that already, she said, amused. You okay? Yeah, I said, and pulled into the motel lot like a man steering a coffin. I think I found it. What? The tire, I said. I think I found the problem. Okay, she said, thrown by the joking tone that wasn't. Be careful. Always, I said, and hung up. I walked to the room and knew, in that compressed photographic way, what I was about to do. I knew I would hate myself for both knocking and not knocking. I knew any version of what happened next would be an X-ray I'd carry for the rest of my life. My feet ignored this wisdom and kept going. I didn't knock. That sounds noble. It wasn't. I stood against the gap between curtain and wall, the sliver people always forget, and looked. I saw a composition so ordinary it felt obscene, the silence after laughter, a knee hooked over the edge of the bed, two people half wrapped in sheet, a lamp with a beige shade throwing yellow on skin. The man's face was turned away, Laura's wasn't. And there was this thing, she smiled. Not the tight, neighborly smile she wears for the PTA, the one I fell in love with when we were 26 and the bartender misheard her order and she made a face then laughed and I thought, oh. I stood there like a meter reader of my own failure and watched my wife kiss a man who wasn't me. It wasn't the pornography the world trains you for. It was worse. It was closeness without show. It was a hand on a shoulder like ownership. It was how you touch when you've told yourself you're owed. I didn't need to see more. I didn't need to knock and make a scene I would not be able to edit later. I left the way I'd come, body cold even though the air hadn't changed. I got in the truck. I sat there and watched my hands not tremble. I waited to feel something righteous. Instead I felt small. At Cedar and 3rd by the Walgreens, Megan's Civic sat at a hunch. The rear tire was a limp mouth. She was in the driver's seat, face lit by her phone, pretending cool. When she saw me pull up, she threw the phone like it was evidence. I told you I was here, she said, annoyed that the universe had made her vulnerable. You did, I said, and popped the trunk and took out the jack and the donut spare and the spider wrench like a magician with modest tricks. I watched a video, she said. We can do it without, I said. Loosen the lugs before you jack it up. Otherwise the wheel will spin. She rolled her eyes in performative patience. I know. We changed the tire in 10 minutes. A man in an oversized truck honked like it was celebration or warning. I showed her the chalk marks on the sidewall, a cut cleanly bored, probably a nail. You ran over something, I said. Stuff happens. I had to pull over, she said, voice defensively round. It felt wrong. You did the right thing, I said, and my body made a note that I had said it. At home, the casserole was a scab of congealed cheese. My parents were 10 minutes out, because my mother believes being late is a sin and being early is a virtue. I put the dish in the oven and said to Megan, "Don't tell Mom you had a flat." She looked up from her phone. Why? Because she'll worry about the wrong parts, I said. I'll tell her later. You always do that, she said. Do what? Buffer her, she said. Like a shock absorber. She'll just ask me anyway. I didn't answer because she was right and because the kitchen light had an intensity that made everything too crisp, like we'd all been moved to a stage set where props were labeled. "Go wash up," I said. Laura got home at 9:08. I heard the garage door and then the kitchen door and her keys and her paws. She stepped into the room holding a grocery bag with nothing in it, just a bag she'd grabbed so it would look like she'd stopped for limes or milk. She smiled at my parents, gave my father a side hug, let my mother kiss her cheek with a theatrical yelp, then looked at me and did not flinch. Her eyes found mine and stayed there as if to say, "How much do you know and how much are you willing to carry into this room?" "Book club?" my mother asked, because conversation sits on rails she's been laying for 70 years. "Wild," Laura said, "breezy. Someone hid an owl figurine in the cake. We made rules. Don't ask." "Why would I ask?" my father said, affectionate in his gruffness. He poured coffee like it was fuel. He added sugar he doesn't need. He always does this and then complains the world is too sweet. We did the family dance, small talk, weather, the school board being ridiculous. My parents sat at our table like they had built it. Megan hung around longer than usual because the room glowed with the kind of friction that anyone can feel. She held her mug in two hands and looked at me periodically like she was checking if I was still there. I kept thinking, say something. Say, "Laura, we need to talk." Say it plain. Being a man, I did the thing where you wait for a perfect moment that never arrives. It arrived anyway. My mother, God bless her surgical instincts, said, "Laura, you look flushed. Are you feverish?" Laura laughed, practiced. "Wine." She touched her hair, the reflex that has attended her since college. We were loud. "Sarah has thin walls." "Sarah moved," my father said. He looks at property records the way some men look at baseball stats. "She's on Grover now." Laura blinked. It was an inconsequential, mammal blink. To me it was a gunshot. Megan looked up like a meerkat. I put my mug down. The sound landed with an ugly thunk. There is a way to do this clean. I did not find it. "Where were you?" I asked Laura. Not mean. Not quiet. Just enough. She looked at me with a capacity I once loved, to calculate in a split second the route that leads to least harm. "At Sarah's," she said. "We decided at the last minute." "Where?" I said. "On Grover," she said, and my father, God love him, opened his mouth, then closed it. He understood. Even he. The silence swelled. "Mom?" Megan said. "Just that." Laura's face did a complicated thing. She looked at our daughter and I saw something like surrender. Then she looked at me, and I saw a different surrender. I hadn't chosen my method. It arrived fully formed. "I had to go help Megan," I said. "Flat tire." Laura's eyes flicked to Megan's, then back. "Is she okay?" "She's fine," I said. She told me she was at Cedar and 3rd by the dog park. I let that sit in the air like biting into aluminum. She wasn't. My mother made a small noise, not at the lie, but at the story. She hates messes. My father's neck tendons stood up like poles. "I don't understand," Laura said, and I thought, of course you do, and we both will pretend for one more minute so we can say we tried. "I drove around," I said. "Cut through Juniper. Past the motel." My mother's hand went to her chest like a trope. Megan set her mug down too hard and a splash went over the rim and pooled like a witness. Laura's mouth pressed thin. "Okay," she said, and I admired her even then. "Okay." "Okay what?" my father said. His voice is made of gravel. He has used it to bargain lawn mowers down $100. He has used it to ask if I am happy in 6 syllables. He has never used it like this, standing in my kitchen, saying, "Tell us." Laura didn't turn to my parents. She kept her eyes on mine. "I'm sorry," she said. 2 words like stones. "I'm sorry." Megan's chair scraped back. "For what?" she demanded, and she was 14 and her voice lilted, but there was steel braided into it, something she got from Laura and something she got from me and something that belongs to her alone. "For lying," Laura said. "For cheating," I said. I didn't say it loudly. It didn't matter. The room rung with it. My mother sat down because she'd been standing. My father put his hand on her shoulder. He didn't look at Laura. He looked at me because men do triage with their eyes. Megan stood. The world reorganized around her. She walked around the table and stopped by my chair and put her hand on my shoulder the way she did when she was little in crowds. It is a gesture that means, take me to where the air is better. I felt our parents seeing it, the symmetry in the universe's stupid little poem. Laura did not cry. She is not a woman who performs sorrow. She swallowed and said, I made a mistake. A mistake, my mother repeated, like she was tasting a word in a foreign language. It's over, Laura said, quick. It's done. Too, my father said, and if you've ever heard an oak fall, you know that sound. Dad, I said, and I did not say it to protect Laura. I said it because there are only so many facts a room should hold at once. It doesn't matter, Laura said, which is the most honest sentence cheaters ever say. It won't happen again. Do you love him? Megan asked. The room was too quiet for that question to be allowed to exist. It did anyway. No, Laura said, immediate. No. Then why, Megan said, and it was not a child's plaint. It was a woman's indictment. Why bring a fire into a home and then act surprised the curtains burned? Because I wanted to, Laura said, and it was my turn to flinch. Because I felt invisible in my own life. Because I could. My mother said, Dear God, into her hands, and fathers all across America would be proud of the restraint my father showed by standing still and not throwing anything. I stood. That's enough, I said, not because it was, but because it had to be. Mom, Dad, I'm sorry. We should have told you alone. You should have told him alone, my father said to Laura, and I had never seen him aim a sentence like that at a woman he loves. Laura nodded. You're right, she said. I kept delaying the worst part and made it worse. Megan's hand pressed my shirt. I could feel the heat of it, the pulse, her real, living body. I said, I'm taking Megan to my parents tonight. Laura, you should go stay with. I can go home, Laura said, meaning her own parents' house. You should, I said. Laura looked at her daughter. I am sorry, she said to her, and I saw Megan blink like she had dust in her eye. She didn't answer. She did not straighten. She just kept her hand on me. Later, when my parents had gone and Megan had thrown clothes into a backpack and I'd found myself packing toothpaste like a camper, Laura stood by the garage door with her purse and that empty grocery bag. I don't want to lose you, she said, not weeping. You already lost me, I said, because the man I'd been at 7:38 p.m. would have softened it and the man I was at 9:52 p.m. did not. She nodded. I'll call tomorrow. I took Megan to my parents' house, where the smell is old books and lemon polish. My mother made tea as if pouring hot water can cure any structural failure. My father sat in his chair and looked at the news and did not see it. Megan crawled into my old bed and stared at the ceiling. She lied, she said, to the room. She did, I said. You knew before, she said, and it wasn't quite an accusation. I saw tonight, I said. Close enough not to be a lie, far enough not to be the kind of truth that scalds. Are you going to divorce her? The words sounded both too big for her mouth and exactly right. I don't know, I said. But I can't stay like this. Okay, she said, and turned away from me, toward the wall that held my teenage posters until my mother decreed them juvenile. She cried without sound. I sat on the floor beside the bed and put my hand on the quilt and pretended my touch could cross layers of fabric and apology. The next day, work was a pantomime. I answered emails about deliverables and returned calls from a vendor whose voice made me want to scream. At lunch I googled therapists and called one and choked on the voicemail, then tried another and made an appointment like ordering parts. I texted Laura Machinery, we need to talk logistics. She wrote back, I'll email you tonight. The dead tone of corporate breakup. My father appeared at my office around 4. He never does that. He carries himself like an apology when he enters spaces he knows are not his. He took off his hat and held it like a prop he hadn't rehearsed with. Your mother wanted me to see how you're doing, he said, Which is how he says I wanted to come and she gave me permission. I'm alive, I said. He sat on the visitor chair and looked at my framed diplomas like they'd offer him context. I ain't good at this, he said, and I pictured him as a young man, courting my mother in a world that smelled like gasoline and permanent waves. But I'm proud of you for not yelling in front of your kid. I wanted to, I said. I know, he said. That counts for something. Or it should. He patted his knee like he used to one calling the dog. Your old man don't have much wisdom, but I'll say this, don't make decisions just to stop the pain. That's not a plan. That's a reflex. Okay, I said, and he stood and put his hat back on and that was the whole hug. That evening, Laura emailed a spreadsheet. I am not joking. A spreadsheet with tabs, schedule, finances, therapy. She had always been a woman who believed in neat columns. The cells had notes about who would take Megan to practice on which days, a breakdown of the joint account, a list of therapists covered by insurance. It was the most Laura thing I had ever seen. It made me want to throw my computer through a window. I wrote back, this is good. Let's talk to Megan together. She replied, tomorrow at 7? We sat Megan down at our table at 7, like an HR meeting. Laura, composed, hair behind her ears. Me, rough, not shaved well. Megan, hoodie up, eyes on the table. We said the lines our therapist would later praise and then tweak, we love you. This is not your fault. We are figuring things out. There will be a schedule. Your life will be as stable as we can make it. We said the lie that is also a truth, we are still a family. Megan listened the way kids listen when they've been forced to sit through grown-up failure. Then she asked, are you still seeing him? Laura closed her eyes. No. Megan studied her. Then, to me, do you believe her? It's a hard thing, looking into your daughter's face and choosing which parent to betray with your answer. I believe she means it, I said. I believe this ends now. Megan nodded. Okay, she said, and stood, and went to her room. We settled into a rhythm people call separation when they want to avoid the bluntness of alone. Laura stayed with her parents, who have a ranch-style house that smells always like hard candies. My mother made meals as if feeding us could keep us from hunger. Megan drifted between houses, trying not to prefer. I went to therapy and found out I was angrier than I knew, which is a cliché and also true. Laura went to therapy and learned words like accountability and childhood narratives and how her father's temper had taught her to either be perfect or be gone. We compared notes lightly, two professionals after a conference. Weeks rolled. The world kept doing the world. The house learned to be without her. I learned where we kept things I didn't use to be responsible for. Megan learned how to time 2 bus routes. The tire got fixed. I kept the nail. One Saturday in November, I took Megan to the mall to buy a coat because she refuses to wear anything that works when it's cold and then complains bitterly when it is. We ate pretzels that tasted like salt and regret. On the way home, she asked, are you going to forgive her? I don't know, I said. You always say that, she said, not mean. I think you already did, kind of. I don't think forgiving is the same as staying, I said. I know, she said. I think I hate her. And I don't. Both. That's called being human, I said, and she snorted because that was very therapist and she's allergic to anything that sounds like a poster. Thanksgiving we divided like maps after a war. My parents stared at the turkey like it would hand them instructions. After dinner, my father and I raked leaves in the dark because men in my family don't know what to do with daylight after bad news. Laura texted a picture of Megan at her parents', a lattice pie on the counter, Megan looking at the camera with too much awareness. I wrote back, looks good. Save me a slice? Then hated how normal it sounded and how desperate it was for that normality. She wrote, of course, with a heart, then deleted the heart and sent the message again. The phone told on her. December walked in like a man who thinks you owe him money. Laura's birthday is the 15th. I left a card on the hall table where we passed the baton of Megan's schedule. I wrote, for what it's worth, you're still the bravest person I know. It was a mean compliment. She texted me later, that made me cry in the Target parking lot. Thanks. I almost texted back, I watched you at a motel. Instead I put the phone face down until the screen blacked out and took my expression with it. Christmas, we did a thing people do when they don't want to admit the shape of a thing. We pretended. Megan slept at Laura's Christmas Eve. They did pajamas and cocoa and a movie where nothing dies. I woke up in our house alone and made coffee that tasted like old pennies and stood at the window watching nothing. I stared at the tire iron on the shelf in the garage and thought about all the things it can fix. At 10:13 a.m. A text from Laura, "We'll swing by at noon? Megan wants to open some here." I wrote, "Yes." I wiped the counter. I arranged the presents under our tree, careful. I put on the Christmas playlist with the songs we both think are too much in love anyway. I put the nail from the tire in the junk drawer like a relic. At 11:54 a.m. A text, "Running late. Be there at 1. At 1:18 p.m. Another, "Sorry. 2. At 2:40 p.m. I called. No answer. The air took on that particular holiday heaviness that has nothing to do with weather. At 3:03 p.m. My phone buzzed. A video. I clicked because hope neuters intelligence. The clip opened on Laura's apartment living room, a small artificial tree, 2 bright lights, Megan sitting cross-legged in sweatpants, opening something in a way that suggests she already knew. Off-camera, Laura's voice, "Show Dad the hoodie." Megan held it up, a black sweatshirt with a logo I pretend I understand. "Thanks, Dad," she said, and for a second it was almost okay. Then the background shifted and a TV came into frame, reflecting light. The little AirPlay icon appeared. Laura's voice, "Quick, no, don't, hold on, settings, the video cut." A beat. A new text, "Sorry. Wrong button. We'll come by after dinner." The words wore a cheer like a borrowed scarf. I stared at the phone until it went dark. I put it face down. I took the casserole dish from Thanksgiving out of the fridge where I'd been keeping it like an alibi and threw it in the trash. I went to the garage and stood under the fluorescent light and stared at our 2 cars. The blue Outback looked back. The dent on the quarter panel was a crescent. I touched it as if it had anything to say. That night, they didn't come. Laura texted at 7:22 p.m. "We're beat. He fell asleep. I'll bring her over in the morning." The pronoun sat there like a nail in a tire. I wrote, "Okay." In January, I filed. The lawyer had the posture of a man who knows grief looks like a ledger. He asked me questions like he was asking what size air filter I needed. I answered. I told Laura. She said, "I thought you might," and her voice did a little break and recovered. "We'll keep it civil." We use the word uncontested as if that were a moral achievement. Maybe it is. Megan's grades slipped. Not dramatically. Just a slow slide like a tire losing pressure in the cold. Her English teacher emailed. I wrote back, "We're going through a family transition." The euphemism tasted like cardboard and I hit send anyway. Megan picked up shifts at the coffee place where everyone orders drinks with more nicknames than people. She came home smelling like sugar and fatigue, which in my house counts as holy. February brought the decree. An envelope. Proof that the state believes in endings as much as it believes in beginnings. I opened it at the kitchen table and read words like as to property and custodial schedule and felt a ridiculous ache at the font. I set it down and went upstairs and stood in the doorway of Megan's room. She was asleep face down on her binder. I put a blanket over her like a cliché and made myself breathe at a regular rate. Laura texted, "Are you okay?" I wrote, "No." She wrote, "Me neither." Then, a minute later, as if she needed to wound and salve in the same breath, "I miss you when I have to fix the sink." I didn't reply. There is a cruelty in kindness after certain kinds of fires. In March, Megan said she wanted to live with Laura for a while. She said it offhand, like she was announcing a change of socks. "It's closer to school," she added, and I nodded because in this country we worship convenience as if it explains anything. "You'll still be here all the time," I said, and she said, "Yeah," and we both heard the hollow rung inside that word. She packed like a girl going to camp, favorite hoodie, whatever charger she could find, toiletries thrown together. She left half of everything and said she'd be back to get the rest, and for weeks she didn't. The house felt like a stage after a show, dust in the lights. I began to sleep on the couch without meaning to. April warmed the fields like an apology that comes too late. On a Sunday, Laura and Megan came over for dinner, and I grilled chicken the way I always overdo it. We sat at the table and talked about nothing. Megan laughed at a meme. Laura asked after my parents. We didn't name the thing in the room, the shadow that fell across forks. After they left, I did the dishes and looked out through the window above the sink at the driveway. The blue Outback glowed under the streetlight. On the workbench in the garage, next to the tire patch kit and the compressor and the spider wrench, lay the nail from Megan's flat. I picked it up. It was ordinary, galvanized, roofing, some contractor's shrug. I turned it in my fingers and thought about cause and effect, about how small, sharp things puncture rubber in plans alike. A week later, I was driving home late from a service call in the next town. If you can believe it, I still care about people's broken furnaces, and I cut down juniper without thinking. The motel sat there like a joke without a punchline. In the back row, under that stupid palm, a familiar silver Outback. Not ours. Not blue. The light behind a curtain. The TV's flicker making fabric into a lie. I could have kept going. I could have turned around. I could have recognized that it no longer mattered. I pulled in. I parked. I sat with my hands on the wheel and the engine ticking as it cooled, and I waited for something like rage to arrive. It didn't. Just that same smallness. That same old, stupid hope that says maybe you're wrong, maybe this is a coincidence, maybe the car is common, maybe the dent is a trick of light. Hope is a vandal. It breaks in and leaves everything where it was, but changed. I didn't get out. I didn't go to the window. I didn't need to know again what I already knew in my bones. I put the truck in drive and pulled away. On the corner, a gas station with an air machine that eats quarters. A woman bent over a tire, hair falling into her eyes, fighting with a valve cap. I almost stopped, because that is what I do. Because we are the sum of our small competencies. I kept going. Back home, the house breathed around me. I put the nail back in the drawer and turned out the lights and sat at the table in the dark, listening to the heater kick on and off, the patient metronome of a life that refuses to stop beating even when you beg it to. I pictured Megan asleep on a couch across town, a TV flashing ornaments. I pictured Laura lying awake, either alone or not. I pictured the motel, room strung like excuses, light behind a curtain. I pictured the tire, the cut, the soft hiss, and the way you don't know you're losing pressure until you do. People will tell you there is meaning. People will tell you this will make you stronger. People will reach for metaphors and I am not above them, I have been using one like a crutch. But here is the truest thing I have, my life did not explode. It hissed. A slow leak. By the time I pulled over, the rim had bitten the road. You can patch some holes. Others, the sidewall is done. The tire looks fine until it doesn't. You can stand there in the fluorescent of a Walgreens parking lot and spin the lugs and lift the weight and put on the donut and tell your kid she did the right thing. You can drive on a spare for a while. The manual says 50 miles, 55 tops. After that you're pretending you aren't sliding. I am good with my hands. I can change a tire in the rain, bleeding knuckles. I can balance a wheel and check the pressure and tighten the lugs in a star pattern so the rim seats true. None of that prepared me for tightening the bolts on a life and realizing the metal underneath is already cracked. None of that prepared me for the sound a house makes when it settles around an absence. At night, silence swells and collapses in the rooms like weather. The refrigerator hums. The neighbor's dog talks to ghosts. The clock over the stove commits to its seconds. I sit and do not turn on the TV. I leave the screen dark. It reflects me, dim, like a man glimpsed in a window walking alone down a street he knows too well. In the glass, the little kitchen light glows and dims as the heater runs, a low, indifferent heartbeat. Somewhere else, a car pulls into a lot under a palm that never belonged here, and a curtain doesn't quite close. Somewhere else, a girl I love breathes and turns in her sleep and dreams in a language I can't hear. Here, a nail sits in a drawer, ordinary and sharp, and the tire iron leans beside the jack, ready for the next time I'm asked to lift what I can't carry. Thank you for listening my story. If you want more raw, real, and gripping stories like this one, subscribe to the A.E.N. Stories channel. Your support keeps these stories alive.